Welcome to the Andy Dare Show. This is episode 43. This week I'm joined by an MTV icon, Matt Pinfield. It's truly an honor to interview one of the greatest interviewers of all time. Thank you so much for checking out the Andy Dare Show. Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking out the Andy Dare Show. Today we have episode 43, and it's a landmark one. I'm finally joined by my idol, Matt Pinfield. If you don't know, he's an MTV icon. He's been on the station since 1993. He's interviewed all the legends. You know, he's really made the rounds in his over 20, almost 20 years that he's been on MTV. But he's also just a great down to earth guy, a very friendly guy. It's a great interview. Be sure to check it out. So I'm going to make this one real brief because I want to get right into the meat of it as soon as possible. But let's get the sponsors out of the way. Today we got Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue. And it's a family-owned and operated business in Westmont, Illinois. They do catering, but they're also just a great family-friendly restaurant that you can take the whole family out to. They have the real deal barbecue, you know, smokers in the back of the restaurant. It's really homemade sides, great desserts, a real nice atmosphere, great staff. The owner, Mark, would bend over backwards for any of his clients and is going to see to it that you enjoy your meal. And besides that, they're also a full-service catering company, which I'm trying to spread the word on. If you're having a wedding and you want to spice it up a little bit and, have a pig roast or do a corporate event or corporate lunch, call Uncle Bub's. They're at 630-493-9000. So if you want to have a party that people are going to actually tell their friends about, definitely hire some Uncle Bub's Catering. Such good food. I wouldn't have it as a sponsor if it wasn't awesome. And if you're in the area of Westmont, it's really just about 20 minutes to the west of downtown Chicago. That's at 132 South Cass in Westmont. And if you have any questions, you can also check out their website. That's UncleBubs.com. They got menus, catering menus, awesome pictures of past parties that they put on, and it's just a good time. So do check it out. That's Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue. And by the Man Grate. What can I say about the Man Grate that hasn't been said? You know, it's real chunks of Detroit steel. These steel grates sit on top of your existing, coat hanger-esque grill grate, and they immediately give you, steak, house-quality burgers, fish, chicken. If you're cooking on these little tiny grates that come with the grill, you're really just cooking with the heat. And who wants to dry out their meat like that? That's just like cooking with a hairdryer, as they say on the commercial. But anyways, when you put on the Man Grate, you're cooking with the convection of the steel, and it's a different flavor. It's the true grill marks that you want to see when you take the burger off of the grill. And I wouldn't have a sponsor if it wasn't something that's an awesome gift. Father's Day will be coming up, and Mother's Day too. So there's times when you need something that the parents will enjoy, and this is something that every parent would enjoy having, So if you want your parents to enjoy, be able to put on barbecues where they're making awesome steaks and burgers and fish, why not buy them a Man Grate? And if you want to support my show too, all you got to do is click through the banner on the right-hand side at theandydareshow.com. That way I get to keep the lights on a little bit longer here, and I get a little bit of payback for all the hours and hundreds of hours that I put into this show. Just a labor of love, but I'm just looking to make it my day job. So why not support the Andy Dare Show by supporting the Man Grate? And just click through the banner and order a Man Grate today. I think it's $20.99. And by Secondhand Mall in Westmont. Also, this is an awesome secondhand store that recently bought out the stock to my old record store, Remember When Records, after they shut their doors after 28 years. And the secondhand mall is a great environment. If you're a handyman looking for an extra tool, they have a huge selection of used tools. If you're a musician looking to fill out your sound, why not check out their instrument section? It's pretty big. They also have mixing boards, all sorts of stuff for the computer. They have video games, DVDs, CDs, and a huge vinyl selection. And check it out. They buy, sell, and trade. So, yeah, if you want to turn that stack of CDs in your closet into some spending change, why not take them to Secondhand Mall? That's Westmont, Illinois. It's 309 West Ogden Avenue. Give them a call if you have any questions. It's 630-810-9980, and check them out on the internet. That's secondhandmall.com, 2ndhandmall.com. All right, I think I'm going to cut it there and let you enjoy the rest of episode 43. I'd like to apologize about the sound on Matt's end. We really should have done it through a landline, but I believe he'll be coming back, so hopefully we'll do it with a little bit better quality next time. Anyways, I think the content comes through, and it's just a really enjoyable look back at a time when MTV was still the #1 tastemaker in the world. So do check it out. And without further ado, my episode 43, One-on-One with Matt Pinfield. I got Matt Pinfield. It's an honor and a privilege to finally get to you. How's your day going so far?
Good so far, Andy. Just it's a pretty nice day in New York City and New Jersey, so it's nice to see the weather has been, really we didn't have too bad a winter. How was it in Chicago?
It's actually been pretty crazy. I mean, we had spring probably almost a month and a half early, it seems like. I mean, I don't know what that holds in store for global warming or whatever, but I'm enjoying it as it happens,
I keep wondering if we're going to, have this brutalized summer, with, hurricanes, tornadoes, and everything imaginable.
Exactly. Who knows, though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the shifting of the planets.
Exactly. But, normally when I have a guest on, I like to go, dig deep back in their past and everything and kind of open up, some early stuff about them. But your story's pretty much already out there in the ether, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people know, I started, I love music, sitting in front of a turntable from the time I was 3 years old. And, and then my dad, is no longer with us, but he knew I wanted to, I loved the radio. I was sitting in front of the radio, so I listened to records all the time. So we built, a little pirate radio station in my basement, and we ran the wire up, the antenna, and it broadcast around the block, so all the neighborhood kids would come in and they'd all be DJs. I'd give them all, show names.
That is awesome. I didn't even know about that. I just heard about the Rutgers stuff, and I thought that was early for you being 16 and being at Rutgers, but that's even before.
I always knew that I wanted to be a disc jockey, and I befriended this DJ named Rich Phoenix from Jersey who was a guy that was on a local radio station that actually, everything else they played on there was terrible.
Sure.
But he was the only one who played, rock stuff at night, so I called him when I was 10 and 11, and he eventually invited me up there. So I would sit in a few times on the show because, I definitely had the fever. I wanted to, be on the radio and be a disc jockey. I just loved music, and I wanted to turn people onto it. So, I mean, that was another very important part of what was going on. But, it was one of those things where, we were a family that didn't have a lot of money. My father was a school teacher. My mom was a housewife, and then sometimes she was a secretary or assistant. But I mean, my father built my first stereo, believe it or not.
Really?
We had he built my first stereo out of wood and the turntable parts.
Whoa.
So
that's back to basics.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was funny because each speaker had its own volume and tone control. It wasn't you couldn't you didn't have the shade. You had to do it with separate dials.
I could see some DJs being into that now, kind of being able to tweak little things like that, But
I gave that stereo away, and now that my dad's no longer with us, I wish to this day that I still had that. But when you're a kid, I was getting the next good, I was getting the next technique stereo, and it was 1,200 turntables, so you weren't really, you're like, someone else could use this, but it's one of those things that I kind of wish I had held on to. But with moving around. Your life changing.
Sure.
All going through marriages, divorces, and everything else. You gotta downsize sometimes anyway.
Sure. Was he a big vinyl guy back in the day, or did you pretty much take the reins as far as the collection?
Vinyl guy. In fact, I still have tons of vinyl. I mean, I have I mean, near my house, I have like the craziest like 45 collection. Not quite as good as the guy who calls himself the 45 King in Los Angeles, Steve Resnick. I mean, he's got every 45 that ever charted on the Billboard singles chart from the time it started. But
you got everyone, huh? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but I'm not about that. I'm not as much of a completist, but I have a lot of like, stuff from like even English singles, like old punk rock and alternative and new wave stuff, and just really just stuff that I listened to. I wasn't as much of a collector as I was, a guy who just was a music enthusiast, just wanted to have it to listen to,
Sure. Like, yeah, and talking about, like, building your own stereo, your dad doing that or whatever, it's kind of bringing up, like, an image of Jack White doing the same thing, like, nowadays with his little 45 club, taking around a school bus that is selling his 45s of him and his record label. I think that's really kind of different and taking it back to, like, a golden era a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you said that because I'm actually going to, it looks like next week I'm going to go out to Jack White's house and take an interview with him for this live stream thing he's got going on with American Express that I'm going to do before. But I didn't want to tape it out there. But yeah, Jackson's cool. I love that, and I think that's one of the things. So one of my favorite scenes in that movie, It Might Be Loud, or Might Get Loud.
Oh, sure.
The guitar movie, that was originally going to be just called Guitar, and then they changed it with him and the Edge and Jimmy Page. It's when he makes a guitar out of wood and like string wire.
Yeah.
I mean, the nails. I mean, that's like one of the coolest scenes, don't you think?
That's totally awesome, yeah. And I just heard he put out a 3 RPM piece of vinyl. So I think that's hilarious, how slowly that would have to move, That'd be 3 revolutions per minute.
I can't imagine, like, 3 RPM, what the fuck that's going to sound like,
Exactly, yeah.
But, I mean, his singles club is great. He sends me everything. And I got, like, recently I just got, what's one of the most, you got everything from, John C. Reilly, the actor, to
sure.
Dwayne, Dwayne the Teenage Weirdo. So, there's just so many cool things. He sends so much stuff. And most recently, he produced, they did a record with Tom Jones. He did like Fire and Jezebel, and it's really cool. It's a very badass track.
What, he guessed it on Tom Jones's latest, or?
No, Tom Jones put out a single on Third Man.
Oh, really? Huh. Jeez, I didn't even hear about that. That's weird.
And it's obviously Jack playing guitar behind him,
Cool.
So it's cool. It's called Fire.
I like music that just puts two worlds that shouldn't be together, like the Lou Reed and the Metallica album. I mean, I was set up to hate that album, but somehow I just kind of gave into it,
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I love both bands. I have relationships. Lou was a big, influence on me as a kid. My brother turned me on to the Velvet Underground on Lou. And then I, became friendly with Lou. And, of course, I know the Metallica guys, too. I think that it's a brave thing for people to do. I think, that the critics were out to slay it. And I think one of the mistakes, though, was that they should have sent the record out to journalists. I think they were treating it a little too precious by not letting journalists hear it, except for on a listening session. And that's one of those things that you need to spend time with to understand or to let it warm to you. So,
sure, exactly. So they kept it like kind of hidden for too long. They should have just slowly let it.
It's one of those things where they're so used to not wanting Metallica's tracks to get out that they treated it like that. But it's not really a Metallica record. It's a Metallica Lou Reed record. So.
Yeah, I was saying I like music that makes me uncomfortable, and I put that first track on, and I felt a little uncomfortable. That can be a good thing, that's how punk rock, kind of affected millions, So.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I was speaking of which, I remember being a kid and going through my job that I worked under the table at like this rental place that rented out like lawnmowers, but it also rented out like chairs and tables for parties. And walking up the highway and going into the record store to buy the God Save the Queen and Pretty Vacant and Anarchy in the UK singles.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's just what a different time. But yeah, that was very confrontational. I mean, speaking of a record that was very confrontational, when I was a kid and I got the first Ramones record, that was a very divisive thing. I mean, I think that was the thing that was not only cool, but was kind of separated people with punk rock. Was you either got it or you didn't. You were either really opposed to it,
sure,
or you warmed to it. And it's who would have thought all these years later, if you had told the Ramones back then that you would be hearing Blitzkrieg Bop in every stadium in the world, they would have told you you're out of your fucking mind.
Exactly, yeah. It was the regular guy punk band instead of like the crazy criminal punk band. It was just the regular 4 dropouts, making music.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're great guys. It's just, it's one of those things that, you talk about life and mortality. It's actually so hard to believe that 3 of the original Ramones are already dead. And like so many other people have outlived them.
Exactly. And Lindsay Lohan is still walking the planet somehow. Yeah.
I mean, and, 2 of them died of cancer, obviously, and one of which is, because of his lifestyle, Dee Dee. But yeah, Joey and I, we become very close. We become great friends, and he's a good guy with a really good heart. That's why every year I host or co-host the Joey Ramone Lymphoma Cancer Benefit on his birthday in New York City. So it's kind of my way of giving back with that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Andy, what else do you like it?
Well, basically, I just had a bunch of random stuff to bring up to you, see what catches here. You just came back from South by Southwest. How about a new band or a band that's only been out a year or two that we should all look for in 2012?
You know what? I like that band, Little Hurricane. I mean, and it's kind of like in the it's set up like the White Stripes, where it's a girl on drums and a guy playing, but I thought that Little Hurricane were really cool. There's an English band called Goldfields. There's a bunch of stuff. I mean, and then I went to the Springsteen show, obviously, because Bruce is, from my home state, and as I've always been a fan. He's always supported me throughout the years on my radio things and everything else.
Sure.
And it was amazing to see Bruce stage dive and crowd surf at 62 years old.
That is amazing. His keynote speech was just was simply so powerful and everything. I just love that intro too to that keynote speech. He never ceases to really amaze me. I mean,
yeah, Bruce is great, and he's such a great guy, and he's the real deal. I mean, he shows people how it's done. I was hanging out with my my girlfriend's father, watching the Bruce Springsteen live at Hyde Park, London, calling DVD because he's a big Bruce fan.
Sure.
And it was so great to see Brian Fallon of the Gaslight Anthem get up on stage with Bruce and do No Surrender. It was amazing because Brian is like, young Jersey guy, but he loved the song. He sounded amazing. You see the smile on Bruce Springsteen's face.
Yeah.
And he just always nurtures young artists, and I love that he does. That he's always done that.
He's never been like a grumpy old man rejecting the new kids. He's always been pretty warm to the next generation. It seems like.
It's like on stage he had Tom Morello, and he did like a hybrid Rage meets E Street Band version of Tom Joad. It was badass.
Oh,
it was incredible. Tom was playing like his crazy, cool, affected pedal guitar, and Bruce was playing his lead, and it was great. That's Bruce. He's a smart guy. He's always welcomed young bands. And, he's always nurtured the bands that, look at him as an influence. Gaslight Anthem, Hold Steady, Arcade Fire. All those bands,
yeah. Totally cool and totally with it, obviously. How about a local band to my hometown, Chicago, Smashing Pumpkins? I saw on Twitter that you're privy to hearing that new album, Oceania. You can be vague, but is there anything you'd like to describe the new Smashing Pumpkins record?
Well, it's great. I really feel I love what I heard. It's a total prog concept album. It's prog rock, and it's got incredible guitar playing and drumming. Billy's playing some great keyboards on it as well. I love it. It's 68 minutes long, and it's I really enjoyed it. There's some Billy's an incredible to me. I think he's just an incredible talent. He's just that's why I love those old records so much. And this record, I think your fans are definitely gonna like it. I think some people are going to have to spend more time with it just because it is a concept record. But as far as songs and playing, there's some great stuff on there that people can grab a hold of.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been a fan for 20 years, obviously, and I just love those new the deluxe sets that you did liner notes for Siamese Dream, right?
Well, you know what I did? I did a interview with Billy for both Gits and Siamese Dream, which is really cool. It's online, it's available, and it was part of a radio special as well. And we really get into the heart of what the Pumpkins are all about and what was going on at that time. And Billy was incredibly forthcoming, very honest, very open, and very revealing. So it was a great opportunity, and I love both those records so much. So So when he asked me to do the specials to promote it, I was, of course I was honored and ready to rock. 'Cause,
Yeah, I think they did a great job on those. They're such like handsome collections, They just look beautiful, and then they're just stacked with unreleased stuff as well.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of extra tracks.
How about that new drummer, though? I mean, I've always been accustomed with Jimmy and Billy together. I mean, they're such a pair, and he's so like
I love
muscular
Jimmy
sound.
Too. Jimmy and I. It's funny because I like everybody in that band and have feelings for everybody in the original lineup. But I think it was one of those things. I don't know. I don't really know what happened, how that fell out. There was never really any. None of it was explained to me. But I found it interesting that, it was a kid that's playing with him now, and that Billy actually asked his parents' permission to make sure that it was cool with him taking him out on tour. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, but what a lucky guy. I mean, I'm sure he worked for it a little bit, but yeah, if he's only 19, 20, that's just got to be a mind-blowing experience for a kid out of high school touring with Billy Corgan.
Yeah, exactly. And
hope he doesn't let it get to his head, though, and, just become a complete rock star asshole, but who knows?
No, he's actually, I've met him a few times, and he's a really humble, nice kid,
Cool. Awesome.
Kind of like Josh is, he was the second guitarist anyways for the touring Chili Peppers, but, and he also played on Frusciante's solo record, so it was kind of a natural thing for Josh to take over since Frusciante didn't want to play anymore.
Okay.
And he's a kid, too, and he's very excited to be there. And when I say kid, I mean, he's a young man. But he's really happy to be there, and he's, he's got a great attitude. He's humble, and I think that's a cool thing.
Cool, yeah, I never really saw the parallel between those two. But, Klinghoffer I thought was a lot younger. I think
it's almost like, when Jason Newsted, even though, he fell out with Metallica, eventually, the fallout was more about the fact that he was doing that side project, and I feel like, it's been documented. James was feeling like, you're Metallica only. But Jason, back in those days, when he actually joined after Cliff Burton died, was also very humble and grateful to be a part of the band. I mean, it was known that they tortured him and hazed him for ages, but whenever he spoke about his position in Metallica, he spoke about it with reverence and with respect and awe.
I even heard that he was partially hazed by them mixing his bass a lot lower than the rest of them during And Justice for All. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know about that, but it was just shit they would do to, just the crazy stuff that people do to their friends, like touring pranks.
It was back when they were Alcoholica, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Well, listen, James is doing amazingly. He's he's been sober a long time, and he's great. And
I got another random one for you, like the Rock and Roll Jeopardy show. Were you ever on that back in 2000, 2001?
No, I wasn't allowed to be there. This is the irony, because VH1 and MTV, even though they were sister stations under the same umbrella, there was still competitive idea that they were competitive.
Okay.
So they didn't let me on there because it wouldn't have looked good in MTV. DJ went on VH1 and then beat everyone. And it's funny because the guy who actually won more than anybody was Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray, of course, now a star on his own. And he's the one who always says, you know what, Matt, you would have beat me at this. Kudos,
Yeah, he knows his stuff a lot. I remember watching him back on the show back then, and I've pitched the idea to a couple people. How podcasts are so popular nowadays, like the Nerdist podcast Empire with, is Chris Hardwick's baby.
And I like Chris is a great guy. I worked with Chris for a while too. What a good dude.
Yeah, he's
great
awesome,
guy.
And he's just he's actually expanding this thing. It's doing so well. They're now touring and expanding to 20 shows, I believe. So I pitched the idea of how about a Rock and Roll Jeopardy podcast? You do it in LA. You have these like a new wave of comedians and musicians do all that stuff, a la like Doug Loves Movies. If you ever heard of that Doug Benson's podcast.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
So you don't have to actually see the people on Rock and Roll Jeopardy to make it be interesting. I don't think the visual element is totally like a necessity, really. So
No, it isn't. I mean, game shows originally were on radio before television, was born.
Yeah. So I pitched it to Mark, and Mark was totally about it. Him having like the best record and everything. And I even pitched it to Jeff Probst. He was all about it. I think it all lies in the Jeopardy name and stuff. And I've heard people say, well, why don't you drop the whole form of that? And then I said, well, then it wouldn't be Rock and Roll Jeopardy. So it's kind of like you have to do it the whole thing or just not do it. I mean, so.
No, I agree. I mean, you never know. You could change it up, but yeah. But I mean, I surely enjoyed watching it, and it was the irony was that then for a little while I did the VH1 Top 20 Countdown for a bit, and then so I ended up working for VH1 and doing stuff for them and for MTV regardless. Anyway, so.
But that was like a year or two later.
What's that?
That was a year or two after Rock and Roll Jeopardy.
Yeah, it was definitely after that because I'd gone to Los Angeles to do Farm Club, and then it was during the period when I was working doing A&R at Columbia, so and a little bit after that as well. And then what I did was I was doing a interview show for Mark Cuban on HDNet, before most people had HD TV.
That's awesome.
But it was cool. You just interviewing artists of every genre, so that was good time as well.
Really, I'll have to. Is there still footage of that, like on YouTube, or is there any way to get that?
Yeah, there actually is. For some of the shows, people have put up there.
Cool.
But I mean, it was so diverse. I can't even, I interviewed everybody from, the Killers and Lou Reed to Hall & Oates to
whoa,
to Hank Williams Jr.
That's range.
To Herbie Hancock talking about jazz. You know what I mean? Like it was everything imaginable.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, you've had some projects that have been like a little bit more obscure. I had a question from my friend Giovanni about that Farm Club. How did you get the idea to do that show, or was that even your idea?
They came to me with that, which is funny because every time I look up at the TV, when I'm like over at ABC doing stuff and somebody's watching American Idol, I see Jimmy Iovine giving people advice. Well, it was Jimmy and Doug Morris. It was their idea, and they came to me through Andy Schoen, who had been my boss at MTV and had left MTV and went to be general manager of Warner Bros. I'd heard about this thing, that they were going to do this show that was based on the internet where people would upload their music and then it would, people would vote on them and then they'd play, on a main stage. And it was unbelievable because, they would play with, A-listers from Eminem to, like U2. Everybody played that show. It was unbelievable. But the idea was that it was way too early. It was a great idea, and it was before the crash of Silicon Valley, before all the dot-coms became dot-bombs. So there was still a lot of people dumping money quickly into the internet, hoping to see quick returns.
Sure.
But it was a great time. We did some great shows. The idea was fantastic. And in some ways, when I see these packages on these other shows where they call them packages, when they go to see people to their towns and see where they work and where they're rehearsing with their band. Cool. I remember when we were sitting in a hotel room on Sunset Boulevard and we came up with that idea before anybody else was doing it. You know what I mean? So
that's huge. It was just 5 years too early, kind of, or
yeah, it was way too early. I remember, when I was interviewing U2 for having this mantle on atomic bomb, I was doing this radio special at a private location. And Jimmy came up to me, and said, "Matt," he goes, "You know what? Fuck, we were just too early. Nobody had broadband yet."
It's true, yeah. Dial-up was all the rage at the time. Yeah,
it would crash on you when you're trying to upload your songs, But I mean, the idea was there, and it was a fun thing to be a part of.
Cool, yeah.
Even if it didn't take hold, but it was historically it was ahead of its time,
That's awesome. How about like the whole move of MTV to Times Square? Was that 1997? That seemed like a little bit of a sea change for the company, and you got like Carson Daly and TRL coming up. That must have been, it was probably MTV's apex of popularity as far as, having popular shows and whatnot. Was it cool to be a part of that, or was that like the beginning of the end, did you feel like?
No, I mean, it was fine. I mean, quite honestly, I was doing, when they started MTV2 and it was just music, I was basically the template for it. So they were looking for somebody and then said, you know what, you're going to do this with two other people. The Times Square made sense so that it would be where the offices were. We used to be at National Studios on 42nd Street. I didn't really see it at the beginning of the end. It was just a change, as you said, a sea change, where the teen pop and thing was happening, and it was ground zero for that. So, you know, it worked really well for that period of time, and it was quite a groundswell. You know, not necessarily what I was doing at the time, but I mean, I was still doing 120 and even doing MTV2 and a bunch of other things, and doing like a specialty show at K-Rock. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It was, and it was. I mean, there's no taking away from the fact that it was very influential in the pop world, right?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, was it like a blast seeing all the people in the streets just screaming up for you?
It was really cool. It was fun. You know, I'll tell you. I always joke around with people. I'm like, you know, I'll never. First of all, I would never do it anyway. Stand outside with nowhere to pee on New Year's Eve with all those fucking people in Times Square because I have an office. You know, I work there. But the thing that I die about is because we had done the New Year's Eve broadcast. I said, you know what? I'll never get a better seat than this.
Yeah.
So it's all downhill from here as far as where you're going to stand when you see the ball drop.
That's very true. That's awesome.
But, you know, I had some great experiences all the way around. And, you know, it's, you know, I mean, I remember that was the thing with Carson. I remember he came up to me at the Universal Amphitheater. He was still just DJing at K-Rock in L.A. Said he was a fan of 120. And then I met him at a party a few days later with a bunch of people. And he said to me, you know, I'm thinking about getting into TV. And I gave him this guy, Rod Ace's card. And the rest is history for him. Because then he ended up going to Motel California. And then he moved to New York, you know?
Huh. So you were there at the pretty much before TRL. That was the beginning, pretty much?
Yeah, for Carson, it really was. I mean, he did stuff for, like, Jimmy Kimmel, you know, down in, like, Palm Springs area. And, you know, Carson's mom was on TV there. And, but, yeah, I mean, that was really where it started at that period of time. And the thing that's crazy that a lot of people don't know is there was a British guy. I can't remember his name. It escapes me. But he was supposed to be the host of that show.
Huh.
Of TRL or Total Request and live MTV Live, and he just kept butting heads with the producers and fighting with them. And then he showed up one day with his head shaved, and they looked at him and went, "We already got a bald guy."
Don't need two.
So I mean, so Carson moved into that spot, man, and that's the way that life. Sometimes with life things, there's a lot of changes, you know.
That's awesome, and now, he's having a good little renaissance with The Voice. You know, Simon started his own show, and now we're saying like, what's that Simon show is just. I mean, nobody's talking about that really right now. I think everybody's talking about The Voice. It seems like. So.
Well, The Voice has a good format. I mean, they took it from a show that was overseas. It's different because so many shows have copied the American Idol, Pop Idol, which is what it was called in England when it started. Sure. Like America's Got Talent, all those other shows. They all have the same format. So this makes it a little bit different. And it also has a lot to do with the personalities. You know, the Blake Sheltons and, Christina Aguilera and Adam Levine and CeeLo. It's like, you got personalities there, and that's really what sells the show. And then Carson's doing a good job on that, too. Yeah, I mean, he's killing this year. He just re-upped his. He does a morning show in the top 40 station in L.A.
Yeah.
And then he does the Last Call at Night, which he does. And so yeah, he's killing it. He's having a great year.
It's a full day.
I'm always happy to see my friends doing well.
Yeah. For sure. Awesome. I got another hometown boy from Chicago. You ever do any interviews with Steve Albini? I had the pleasure last February to do an interview at his studio, Electrical Audio. Couldn't be a nicer guy. I mean, he had a reputation of being a guy who puts his nose up at a lot of pop music and whatnot. But couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be a nicer guy.
Well, I never interviewed Steve, but I'm a big fan of those Big Black records that he did.
Of course, yeah.
I love all that stuff a lot, and I love that cover single he did of "He's a Whore" by Cheap Trick and Kraftwerk's The Model. Besides songs about fucking and all those other records.
Exactly, but, it's the weirdest sound ever. That the drum machine going along with like the dark, almost thrashy alternative music. It was weird.
Yeah, it was cool though. I nothing but respect for the music that he's put out and worked on.
Of course, yeah, and he even had good stories about Iggy Pop. He did the last Stooges album, the last one with the guitarist. And, he had stories about Page and Plant, Jarvis Cocker from Pulp, the Manic Street Preachers. People don't know the range of his catalog. I actually, looked it up, obviously, before I was doing the interview. He claims to have over 1,000 albums recorded, by Steve Albini. So
yeah, I mean, he's made, it's amazing because, obviously, all my contemporaries were all fans of, the Big Black stuff. And then when he recorded Nirvana, it really opened the door to a lot of other, a lot of other people took notice,
Sure,
people
yeah.
that wouldn't have necessarily maybe known who Steve was. So he's done great, and he's made some great records. I think it's funny that he still says that whole recorded by. He doesn't like the word produced.
Yeah, no points, and it's recorded by. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of another...
and that's as punk rock and DIY as it gets, so that's cool.
Exactly. Pretty much. I'm speaking of another producer of Nirvana. Just heard the new Garbage single. I love Butch Vig. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, Butch Vig always has so much detail in his production. It's almost the opposite of an Albini, and he totally filled this one up to the brim with little studio trickeries and whatnot. Have you heard the new single?
You know what? I have heard it. Yeah, I like it. I mean, Butch and I are old friends. He's a great guy. I just ran into him. I was hosting the Bob Mould had brought me out to Los Angeles to host his that evening with Bob Mould tribute thing that was celebrating his book.
Sure.
And it was Dave Grohl and Ryan Adams and Spoon and No Age and it was a ton of people. It was great. And we we did a show at the Walt Disney Music Hall, and it was a little different than a regular show. I was actually going on stage and interviewing the artists and their relationship to Bob, or why they were fans from Grohl to Bridge Andy from Spoon. And Butch was there. Butch came out because he had done one of Bob's records and had worked with Bob, and he had known each other for years. So it was cool to just stand there with him and Grohl and Bob talking about the records they worked on. It was very cool.
Did Butch Vig actually do a Bob Mould album, or was it just through meeting him through the Foo Fighters last album?
No, he actually knew Bob for a while. He worked with with Bob on other stuff, and I think Bob even I think he might have, because Bob has produced other people. Butch might have even been involved in kind of helping him learn how to his way around the studio. I mean, they're old friends, and Butch used to be two bands. One was called Spooner, and then he was in a band called Firetown.
Yeah.
Which were jangly band, kind of like REM, Birds, and
jangly.
Yeah. Butch is great, man. He's a good guy. You know what? He's great, and I think the same can be said for Steve Albini. It's different when a producer is actually a musician too, because then they understand a lot more about their way around the studio and the way around instruments. I mean, that's the big difference.
Exactly, like Rick Rubin and all. I mean, he's obviously probably the most successful rock producer of the last 20 years and doesn't touch a single instrument, just sits there and sends good vibes to the bands.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't even engineer the records. I mean, that's where Brendan O'Brien came from. That's where George Koukoulias came from.
Sure.
But a lot of people get their start with Rick, and then they, skyrocket and do a lot of other things. Yeah, I mean, Rick's one of those guys who just has that Midas touch, which is amazing. And he's a good guy. But, I mean, you got to give credit to a guy who, really was the one who put Aerosmith and Run DMC back together. And between him and Russell Simmons, but mostly Rick, you've got to think that, a lot of people owe the guy a lot. And you know what? They're paying him dearly for it.
Oh, I know they're paying, yeah, for sure.
I mean, a shitload of thanks.
The guy gave birth to, hip-hop on the pop radio, I mean, out of his dorm room, correct? By starting Def Jam,
Yeah. I mean, those LL Cool J records, Beasties, and then Run DMC were signed, of course, to Priority. But, I mean, that stuff was amazing. It was and it was like nothing else at the time. And people, it's like the internet, when the internet came up, and the powers that be wanted to ignore it. They wanted to, they just didn't want to deal with it. And of
put
course,
a muzzle on it. Yeah.
A force a power that's a major force that they can't ignore.
That's very true. Yeah. How about you brought up Nevermind or Nirvana, excuse me. I actually just took a pilgrimage, excuse me, to Mecca, as I say. I went to Aberdeen last fall and got driven around by my parents. I told them I wanted to go up there, and people were telling us, "What do you want to see up there?" There's nothing to see in Aberdeen. And I felt like there would be a reason to go. So we went there, and we Googled it up on our phones and found his childhood home. And it basically looks exactly like the house I'm living in now. It wasn't very exciting. There's like a campaign poster sitting in the lawn. I needed something else. So we found the Yonge Street Bridge. And, that's the famous bridge from, Something in the Way and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we went under there.
The buddy was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got to tell you, I went there myself because the winner of the Metallica Motherlode contest won in Aberdeen, of all places. And the sheriff or the police chief actually gave me Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic's mugshots from when they were 16 and when they were arrested.
Whoa.
So, I have their mugshots with their pimply-faced kids, like we all are. That bad, But,
I'm remembering the Motherlode contest, too. It was right after they all cut their hair for the Load album, right? And I remember Hetfield playing basketball with the kid. I have a vague memory of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we were like, we got. It was funny because we all got out of the back of that tractor trailer, and then they played in this little bar for the kid, and we hung out and had pizza upstairs with him. And
that was Aberdeen, huh? I didn't even know, huh?
Yeah, we were in Aberdeen. It was funny because I got there the night before and then just jumped in the back of that giant truck outside of town.
Awesome.
Promotion. Nobody went to the back of that truck for more than 20 minutes. You know what I mean? But we all got in it there, and I was in town the night before, but I couldn't go out from my hotel. And there's not much to do anyway, but
sure.
I couldn't go out because they didn't want everybody to see me because then they'd figure out that they were the winning town.
Oh, I got you. They would give it away right away. Huh.
But yeah, Aberdeen's it's an interesting town.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely feel like what went into some of the feelings and emotions just by going under the bridge. Kurt was carved into the hillside. I mean, you see a bunch of fan art, fan graffiti. I felt his vibe, next to the Wishkah there. It was really cool. And I actually did an interview with Aaron, the first Nirvana drummer, Burkhard. Aaron Burkhard?
Yeah, of
and
course.
He couldn't be a nicer guy, totally down to earth. He's still playing in bands in Aberdeen, still hangs out with Tad up in Aberdeen all the time. They go up to Seattle. He still talks to Endino and stuff like that. And he actually fooled me because they had a show this Saturday night, and I actually re-aired the interview, and he said, "Oh, thanks, Andy, for re-airing the interview. I'm playing at this place in Aberdeen." And then the next morning on his Facebook page, it says, "Everybody, this is Aaron's brother, Ron. I am typing this to tell you that we were pulled over after the show last night, and they found a few warrants, and that Aaron will be staying in jail for probably the next 2 months. Sorry to let you know this."
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and then so we were all, sending our condolences and everything. And then I go back on that night. It was an April Fool's. So it was
Oh man, that's crazy.
And I had a good laugh. The guy is full of humor, funny guy, and totally not bitter or anything about how he got, canned from it, but he's part of a legacy that'll never die, So
Right, exactly. I mean, he's got his part in history.
Exactly.
And speaking of Nirvana history, and Dave Grohl bought the soundboard that was at Sound City where they recorded Nevermind in Van Nuys, and so many classic records were recorded there that Dave was actually making his own documentary, put all these artists together, and of all these people that because everybody recorded there from Fleetwood Mac to Tom Petty to Cheap Trick to it's just it's an incredible place. And when I've been in there, I spent quite a bit of time in it. The drum sound that you hear, obviously it's Dave. Dave is like a machine, but he's such an incredible drummer. But there is something about that room, the sound of drums in that room, the thunder, And but I'm interested to see that movie's almost done. So that documentary will be coming out soon that they put together, which is very cool.
That was awesome. I really loved that last Foo Fighters documentary, talking about the making of Wasting Light.
Yeah, that goes back and forth was amazing. It was so good, wasn't it?
It was awesome. It was that the same board that they're using in the garage now, you're saying? Or
I don't know if that's the Sound City board. It might be. You know what? I think he might have bought it after the album was done, to be honest with you, because it had still been rented out for bands to do albums, and then they took the studio private. So with that being done and being said, Dave bought the board. He wanted to have that board, you know.
Oh yeah,
so,
of course.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So how about Stump Matt has been coming back and forth, almost your whole career, right? Is there one Stump Matt that really got you and that you can remember?
There's quite a few. I'll tell you a funny story. Obviously, I know a lot about music, yes, but nobody knows everything. Even though people will claim that I do, and I do know a hell of a lot. But no human being knows everything. But that's because it's all about personal experience too. But it's funny. I don't really remember the times that people told me. Like, we used to do it every day on my radio show in New York City, my morning show. And once every week or two, someone would stump me. But I think that's cool because it gives people something that they get pumped about it.
Sure.
And then I learned something new. My philosophy has always been, the minute you think you know everything is the minute you stop learning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you what, one of the worst experiences I had doing the Stump Matt thing, though, was we were doing it for TRL out in the Winter House. It was like Lift Ticket to Ride in Ashland, Colorado.
Sure.
And I had fucking sneakers on, and I'm standing on an ice skating rink, so I'm freezing my absolute gonads off there. And I'm getting questions shot at me through the headset, people calling in. And when you're that cold, you don't think that well.
Sure.
So, and that was a tough one because I think I literally got 3 out of 10 right, which is not that.
3 out of 10. Not a good showing.
But it's exciting. Listen, I love music. It's one of those things where I remember I retain a lot of information about music because it's my passion. It's not really about stats, because if it was about stats, then maybe it would just be like a sports thing, and nothing against sports, people that know a lot about sports, but sports, or maybe I'd be using that for numbers to be like one of the biggest accountants in America. No, for me, music is my passion, which is why I retain it. I've never really been able to explain it, but it's real, and it's from the heart, so...
And it is a lot like sports, that's why I pitched the Rock and Roll Jeopardy thing to the Nerdist thing, because it is kind of nerdy when I'll bring up the most random stuff to, I'm 28 and I work at a barbecue restaurant with a bunch of teenagers, and I'll bring up something, they will not know it, and they'll look at me for being a nerd for knowing. So, but I'm proud of it always.
I'm a nerd or a geek. I mean, you can call me geek, call me a nerd, but man, I love music. It served me well, and it's just who I am. Take it or leave it. That's exactly.
It's a passion. You can't remove it. You can't do anything about it. It's stuck there. It's ingrained since you got your first rock record.
That's cool with me.
Yeah.
I'm totally all right with that, right?
Just listen to my show. Yeah, exactly. So you're still doing 120 minutes, obviously. Who's been the coolest guest that you had? Let's say since Christmas.
I mean, really, everybody's been great. I mean, there've been so many different artists on there. It just. We're sometimes having 3 or 4 artists, a week. I mean, everybody's equally great. Nobody has been, unappreciative of being there. Everybody's been excited to be there. Some of the bands are people that grew up watching me, which is very cool. And then, or just love what the show stands for. So people, everybody's been pretty cool. I mean, the thing that was really interesting was Simon Felice, who was in the Felice Brothers, who played an acoustic song on the show. But we didn't realize she's like one of the only people I've ever met in my life that had an adolescent aneurysm like I did.
Really?
It killed me when I was 15, and he was 12, and he was pronounced dead for 6 minutes, and his mom climbed up on the table there. The priest wanted to give him the last rites. His mom told the priest to get out, and she climbed up on there and told him not to go, and he came back, which is wild.
Oh, my goodness. Jeez.
So he and I both had, that there was that connection there. So that was very, for me, it was a very personal thing,
Yeah, that's a really crazy story.
Most aneurysms don't happen to people at that young age, and I was 15. And he was 12. So
how did that affect you at the time when you had yours? How long were you out of the game for? Or?
Well, I was in the hospital all summer, basically. And it was weird, I was going from junior high into high school. So here I was like a singer in a band. We were like the cool band. And at the time, it was like before everybody accepted baldness and punk rock. So I went in there with stitches up and down the side of my head and like with my head shaved, which now is my trademark look, and it's what I love them. That's who I am.
Sure.
But at the time, it was traumatic to be 15 and go from junior high to high school, where half the people you don't know yet, and feeling a bit like an alien, to be honest with you.
Sure, I mean, that's a tough time for everybody, but not to mention having an aneurysm in that summer. That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a rough period for me. But, hey, listen, I'm here. I'm grateful. I'm glad to be alive. I'm glad to be around. And,
that's awesome. Everybody should think that way, obviously.
But yeah, so Andy, it was really great talking to you today, man. I really I enjoyed it. And I'm sorry it took you so long to be able to nail me down.
Hey, no problem. I understand everybody's plate is pretty full, and no, I just appreciate you took the time out of your day. I mean, I got a ton of stuff to talk about, but you could always come back, and
yeah, we could do it again. Yeah, like why don't we? I'd be glad to come back on in a couple of months if you want. All right.
I got one more question to end on, if that's cool.
Sure.
How about the first episode of 120 and what was going through your mind, and can I get a date, an approximate date of that?
My first episode that I did was in 1993. I was filling in because Dave Kendall had already gotten let go, and then they had artist hosting. So I did an audition because, like, oddly enough, I had like a big following in Jersey. I was like a big fish in the small pond. I was on the radio there doing afternoons. I was DJing at the coolest alternative club in town. And my friend who worked at MTV, I met him because we met at a show, and then they used to call me up to track records and find out, whether it was real. Like the record company was hyping them on a band.
Sure.
They would call me, among other people, to ask if it was real, if there was a real temperature for it, if people really cared.
That's awesome.
If it was reacting. So in a trade magazine that Dave Kendall had exited the show, so I asked him what he said David got let go. And I was joking with him. I said, you know what? I think I should be on there because somebody who knows what's going on with music and would ask the bands and artists intelligent questions.
Cool.
And he said, I don't know if you're still in the demo. This at that period. He goes, but I'll ask them. And then he called me back an hour later and said they wanted to come in for an audition. So I did that. It took about a month because 120 wasn't the first priority. But I went in, and then all of a sudden, Depeche Mode were coming on and said that they did not want to host. So I went on, interviewed Martin Gore and Dave Gahan, and it was it was pretty wild to be because obviously this was my first time getting in there, but I remember being kind of burned out at the time. He was tired, and I remember it was just paining me because he was kind of looking the other way just because he was burnt. But I was like, no, dude, don't do this. So for years, I always fuck with him. I mean, he's a great guy. We've known him for years now. But I always say to him, dude, you almost killed my fucking TV career before it started.
Don't ruin it, please.
Of course, Dave DeHaan was super friendly and was very open and was talking the whole time. And, But, I mean, I've known those guys for a long time. In fact, I did the radio special for the last studio album, Sounds of the Universe. So, I've continued a relationship with them for a long time.
That's cool. And a whole career of interviewing built on that. Well, I mean, you were doing it before, but exploded after that, obviously. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. I didn't get the gig right away. They put Lewis on the air, but they said they liked the job I did. So what happened was I stayed in touch with them, on a monthly basis, and then the music department was changing at MTV. There were 3 people leaving. So they needed to fill 3 places, and I asked them, I was interested, and I said, of course I am. Because I was down in Asbury Park at a small market station, and I needed to grow. I was working 3 jobs, just to take care of my oldest daughter. So I went there and worked in the music department. I joined them as manager of music programming, so I was one of the 10 people who picked the videos, scheduled the shows. And it was a great opportunity. And then I didn't go back on the air for another 5 months because I didn't even think I was ever going to go back on the air. And then Oasis came in, and they said they didn't want to host. So they put me on the air, and then the rest is history,
So these bands not wanting a host kind of got you a leg up. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
Awesome. Well, we'll end it there, Matt. Really appreciate it. And if my listeners want to follow you, that's obviously at Matt Pinfield. You're mattpinfield.com, correct?
Yeah. I'm at Matt Pinfield on Twitter and awesome. Matthew Pinfield on Facebook. All right?
All right, sounds good. I really appreciate it, and this has been a long time coming. It really means a whole lot to me. Just want to thank Matt Pinfield, and on behalf of Matt Pinfield, thank you so much for tuning into the Andy Dare Show.
Be sure to follow Andy on Twitter at Andy Dare. That's ANDYDERER. And like the show on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Andy Dare Show. There's videos at youtube.com/Andrew Martin Dare, and it all leads back to theandydareshow.com. Support our show by supporting our sponsors, The Man Great, Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue, and Secondhand Mall. Thank you so much for listening.